January 9th, 2023. I'd like to call to order City of Laconia City Council meeting. Before we go any further, I request Councilor Lippman to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Councilor Lippman. We're joined at the council table by Katie Gargano, Laconia City Clerk, and I ask her to please call the roll.
Councilor Cheney,
Here.
Councilor Susie,
Here.
Councilor Littman,
Here.
Councilor Haynes,
Here.
Councilor Felch,
Here.
Mayor Hosmer.
Here. Here. Also joined by Kirk Biotti, Laconia City Manager, and Glenn Smith, handling our IT, our City Finance Director. Agenda item 7A, which is the minutes of the regular City Council meeting of December 27th, 2022, which were distributed to the City Council on January 5th, 2023. With no corrections or changes submitted to the clerk, the minutes will be accepted as distributed. Moving on to agenda item 8A, which is a request from the Lakes Region Sled Dog Club to waive license, vendor, and loudspeaker fees for the February 17th to 19th, 2023 sled dog event. This is a recurring request with no changes from prior years and prior approvals. A letter of request and additional information received from the Lakes Region Sled Dog Club is attached to our packet this evening. Special Events Review Committee will include the event in their February agenda. Looking right now for a motion to move to approve the request from the Lakes Region Sled Dog Club to waive license, vendor, loudspeaker fees for the February 17th to 19th, 2023 sled dog event, pending approval from the Special Events Review Committee. So made by Councilor Susie, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. 5 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Item number 9 on our agenda, which is citizens' comments for matters not on tonight's agenda. If there's anyone present here in the chamber who would like to speak to an item or something that is not on tonight's agenda, now would be the appropriate time. Welcome, Patrick Wood.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, I'm on the Laconia Human Relations Committee, and I just wanted to let you know that this Sunday between 2 and 5 at the Belknap Mill, there will be a program on Martin Luther King Jr., honoring Reverend King. It'll start, as I say, at 2 o'clock. It'll end around 5 o'clock. There's also a art exhibit in the gallery at the Belknap Mill that will be in place until the 31st of January. So we'd invite you all to participate in that event on Sunday afternoon and come to the Belknap Mill and see the art exhibits. And there's also a Zoom event Saturday evening through the synagogue talking about Judaism and MLK Jr. So that's a Zoom event. I think it's at 7 o'clock. So Martin Luther King is a very special part of our country, and it's wonderful to be able to celebrate him as we do and remember all that he's contributed. So again, Sunday afternoon at the Belknap Mill, 2 to 5 o'clock. So thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Anyone else seeking to comment on items not on the agenda?
Am I correct that the Airbnbs are not on the agenda tonight?
That is correct.
That's correct. I believe that's correct. Let's,
Diana Sack, Gale Avenue.
you pull that microphone down a little bit there, that'd be great.
Diana Sack, Gale Avenue. Our neighborhood needs relief from the encroachment of Airbnbs in our residential non-resort neighborhood. Particularly the one I'm speaking of is at 65 Gale Avenue, which is right next door to us. It's being advertised for it. In the past, it has housed families of parents and 2 children for about the past 40 years, various families. And now it's advertised on Airbnb, currently for 14 people. And I walk the neighborhood almost daily. I have seen as many as 7 or 8 cars there, some parked across the sidewalks, some parked on the streets in violation of the winter parking ban. And a number of neighbors have been disturbed by noise from there, as well as apparently a dog left barking all day. We're not a resort. This property could be available for a family of people who work in Laconia, and now it's empty all week and occupied by large groups on the weekends, and we need that issue addressed.
Thank you. Perhaps the city manager,
Yep,
can you
no,
let us know
thank you,
whether
thank
this
you.
has
I know
been-
we've talked via email.
has this been registered as an Airbnb, first of all, with the city?
It has not. It has not. The planning department is working on that now. In their zone that they're in, it does have to be owner occupied. They are working on that to make that determination, whether it is or is not. And we don't believe it is. And if it is not, they're going to continue through that process to make it unavailable to be able to use that property for that reason.
So can you just help us all understand and what is the exact timeline to follow through? Because I would think every weekend that this is rented and it's not registered and it's outside the appropriate zones, it's impacting the quality of life of the neighbors, immediate neighbors, as well as the neighborhood itself. And I think I think we should be able to provide some form of timeline to let people know what we're going to do and when we're going to do it.
Yeah, the from planning has gone. It's my understanding. It's the first. I don't think Dean's here now.
Oh, hi, Dean.
They are working on the timeline. We went to legal for clarification, right, for sending it out.
How about
come
maybe
on up, Dean.
if you're finished speaking, maybe we can have someone address this, if that's okay. Welcome.
65 Gale.
65 Gale, yes.
After some complaints and discussion with neighbors and our investigation, we have determined that the applicant does not meet the requirements for owner-occupied. That would be the only provision in that zone that would allow him to have a short-term rental permit. Does not qualify for the 5-year or any of the other provisions. So it would be owner-occupied would be his only option. We will have a letter out this week denying the application. Quite frankly, he's been doing short-term rentals for some time now without a permit, and I'm not sure that a denial of the application is necessarily going to change the situation, but at least it gives us the opportunities to do further enforcement.
And can you refresh our recollection? What's further enforcement look like?
In theory, fines of $275 a day for each occurrence. Under the provision, you could revocate permit, but he does not have a permit, so that option is out. But we would have to go to court to assess those fines, and that is not a short process.
No, nothing in court is a short process. But, this is, I know this council worked very hard on putting some guidelines in place and certainly not trying to squelch anybody who wanted to Airbnb in the appropriate areas with the appropriate approvals. So certainly somebody who has been flagrantly disregarding the work of the council and what's in city ordinances, hopefully we can expedite this so the quality of life that's being impacted by people on that street can be addressed in short order.
Yep, agreed.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hello.
Kelly Dion, Winnequa Street. I'd like to go to bat for the planning department. I think they're overrun with this issue, and I apologize, this idea came to me this afternoon, so it's not super well thought out, but it may give you food for thought. I feel like the area is being overrun with short-term rentals, and it's hard to enforce the rules and go through the registration and the education process. So I thought, you know, there needs to be like a short-term rental officer or employee and have it funded through registration fees of the Airbnbs. Now, I understand this could probably not be a total Laconia position, and this is where you think outside of the box and coalesce with other surrounding communities that maybe, you know, I'm sure I've read about it in the paper with Gunstock Acres being overrun, you know, problems. So you may share a position with Guilford, Meredith, Alton, Samberton, that type of thing. So,
Sounds pretty well thought out to me.
well, I mean, not sitting there with, you know, I have no idea how many, Dean, how many registrations there are for Laconia.
Well, compared to the number that are apparently in operation, it's a
Right.
rather
But
small
if you
amount.
have a dedicated employee and person who's well-versed in it and can be out there working it every day, enforcing it, and they're a known, you know, person. Anyway,
Very good. Thank you very much.
sure, you're welcome.
Come right up.
Good evening. My name's Billy Smith, and I live on Winnequa Street also. I'm not going to beat this to death, but it is important. It really is, and I just want to. I've written to the planning board a while back, not too long ago, and I just wanted to share that with you, just a bit of it. I'd wanted to write to you very much sooner than later, regarding a serious issue with our neighborhood, of which I'm an abutter. My property does abut 65, and I didn't receive any notice whatsoever that they were doing an Airbnb, and obviously they didn't follow the guidelines. But I've lived here for over 13 years. However, my husband, Lawrence Leonard, had purchased the property over 60 years ago. Larry recently passed away and was under hospice care at home. It was during this time that issues started to arise regarding 65 Gale Avenue. This, for the most part, as has been articulated, is a quiet neighborhood, which made the accommodating Larry's ability to live out the last part of his life at home preferable by all means. However, we were not aware that 65 Gale Avenue had been resold, and it would not have mattered to us except that what seemed out of nowhere, the occupants in the house were extremely loud and late into the night. This occurred on both the back screen porch and the fire pit in the backyard, as well as the late hours of the night. The back porch that goes across the house it spans the whole length of the back of the house, and it's screened in, and it's deep, and it's every bit 7 to 10 feet up off the ground. And so our home, like many other New England homes, do not have air conditioning, and therefore we rely on open windows and sliders to draw in cooler air. Larry's medical condition had him confined to the house, and as he was a quiet person and kept to himself, he didn't want to create any unrest in the neighborhood. His quality of life suffered because of who we thought were neighbors. Now I find out that it was an Airbnb customers with an absentee landlord. The fact that this property abuts ours would give me reason to believe that we would have been notified. I assumed that all the cars parked in the, here, there, and yonder. I mean, I came home from Christmas the Friday before New Year's at 2 in the morning on an airline flight, and there were 4 cars parked in their driveway, which filled it, and 3 cars parked one right behind the other all the way to the stop sign. And, you know, granted, we didn't have any snow, but if you're coming off the Holman and you want to take a left or a right on Gale, somebody's going to have a horrible accident there one day. So anyway, I hate to even go down that road having to say anything, but Larry's quality of life at the end was greatly impaired because of this. And he would not ever have wanted to be at a city meeting or a planning board meeting saying anything, and he never did all these years. And I appreciate what you're doing to correct the matter. I really do. Thank you.
I'm very sorry for your loss. I'm sorry it impacted the end of your husband's life. And rest assured, this will be a priority for,
I admire all of y'all for what you do. I do.
thanks.
And I thank you very much.
Anyone else looking to speak to matters not on tonight's agenda? Come right up.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'm Kevin Morissette, 518 Shore Drive. I'm here to talk about Eastman Shore North for a few minutes. I'll give you a little history. There's 34 houses on it. It has a value of a little over $32 million. I'm using round numbers. Last year's value was $20 million. It brings in $480,000 in taxes. This year, the increase was $177,000 more than last year. So with that in mind, I'd like to see the road maintained a little better than it is. This Eastman Shore North brings in a lot of money for the city, and I know it's not an official city accepted street, but that's something that should be worked on too. But I would like to see this springtime, when they go out and grade the roads, that they clean the ditches, not on the lakeside, on the other side, clean the ditches out and put down ledge pack instead of gravel. I believe that would put the road in a better shape, and if the city spent $60,000 on the road, so what? They've just got an extra $177,000 for this year on that. And I own 226 Eastman Shore Road North, the last place on the lake. And the tax bill doubled within $300. It went up, it doubled. So I just, I would like to think that the city council would recognize that this thing is a cash cow and they could spend a little money on the road. And one other thing is if the assessment, you know, in the city, they say, oh, they go out and, you know, they stay up to date. Every year they're adjusting and this and that. I know Guilford taxes on the lake, they went up $200 or $300 in Smith Cove. Same thing on Winnisquam on Lower Bay Road. I have a place over there. It went up $1,000. You'd expect that type of increase every year. Wouldn't be upsetting, but the taxes, you know, when they double, they go from basically $12,000 to $20,000. And my house on Shore Drive is now $38,000, the highest one on the street. Lucky me. But it just seems like once in a while they could take some of the money that's generated from the neighborhood and put it back into the neighborhood, and I think that Eastman Shore is a perfect example that should be looked at and hopefully addressed.
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. Is that Ward 1? Is that Ward 1?
Yes.
It is, yeah.
One,
If I might, I've
Yep.
dealt with other neighbors up there about the ditch problems, and Wes is aware, and I got a message from the manager saying they were looking at a process to try and, you know, take care of some of these issues
Yep.
come spring.
yeah. It'd just be nice to get, you know, that the council could get the word to the city manager so it does get to West Desk that they plan on it and can do it when they're, you know, every year they go out and grade the road a couple times, but it'd be nice to do the ditch work and put in ledge pack instead of gravel. I think they'd find that it would work a lot better.
I think the manager understands that and has made an effort to try and move that
Okay, it would be nice.
forward.
One other thing I'd like to make a comment on is the tax bills. The city had to know these tax bills were coming out to the people on the lake, and some of them as much as doubled. It would have been nice, a little notice, maybe a couple months before or something, to, hey, be prepared, you know? It caught a lot of people off guard, and, you know, not everybody can just open their checkbook and write the check. Some people live on a budget, and, but I think it's been a little nice for the city to notify them. And, you know, I talked to them down at assessing, and they said, you know, don't be surprised if they still keep going up.
Well,
But that's another story.
that's another story. Yeah, but I appreciate your perspective on that, and well taken.
I think when we met with the consultant that we work with on assessing, we talked about, you know, when you look at the averages, that was a little bit, we didn't look at the details, so what we're gonna try to do is set something up so that we can publish some things so people have a better sense of how the market is moving or not moving. So I think that the input you're giving us here is, we've heard from other taxpayers, and we're going to do something to address that.
Nice.
Thank you, Kevin.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you. Kevin, do you have just a second, maybe an update on the old Holy Trinity School?
The Holy Trinity School, I sold the property last week.
I didn't know that. No,
Yep.
Wasn't mean to put you on the spot. I
Yep,
didn't know
to
that.
the same investors that bought 111 Church Street up by the CVS where I did that one there. It's the same bunch of people, and we're finishing, the 10 units are all done in the original school, and now we're doing the 4 units on the back to finishing that up.
Any idea when you might be finished?
By May, but 5 of the apartments are already rented out in there.
And how many total units will be in there?
14 units.
Oh.
Yep.
Great.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else looking to make comments on items not on the agenda? Moving on to agenda item number 13A, which is public hearings. Under public hearings, this one is in regards to ordinance 2022-161-25, parentheses 01, amending chapter 161-25, alcoholic beverages. Notice of this public hearing was made available in the December 15th, 2022 edition of the Laconia Daily Sun and posted at Laconia City Hall, Laconia Community Center, Laconia Public Library, and the offices of the SAU. So I'd like to open the public hearing on this matter at 7:23 p.m. and also just make a quick note that this matter may be taken up under unfinished business later on in the meeting. So if you're here to speak to that, now would be the appropriate time. Come right up.
Hi.
Welcome.
Welcome, thank you. Stephen Bogert, I'm 21 Spruce Street, and I want to say I think this is a positive move forward as far as providing a little bit longer entertainment in the Weirs Beach area by allowing some of the establishments to be open till 2 in the morning. Since I have all my kids out of the house and stuff, me and the wife do like to go out and enjoy the evening time. And to have some place that we can venture to is kind of nice. So,
That's not the evening time.
well,
That's very early morning, but good for you.
well, you got to look at it this way. We come from Fort Lauderdale, and down there they have 4 o'clock as the bar closing time. So if you were working a second shift, you would still have an opportunity to have a life after work versus when it closes at midnight or 11 o'clock and stuff like that. You don't get off, and then you don't have no life. So it does add to it a little bit.
All right, well, Representative Bogan, I'm gonna keep my eyes open for you late night down at the Weirs, okay?
Who are you kidding?
Keep your eyes
Late
open when you're
night for
laying on
me
the
is
pillow.
9
None
p.m.
of us. Nobody here is gonna be there.
I'll tell him hi.
All right, if no one else is gonna speak to this matter, I'll close the public hearing at 7:25 PM. Moving on to item number 13B, which is public hearing to explore parking options requested by Scott Everett and August Properties LLC for his property in Lakeport at 51 Elm Street. Notice of this public hearing was made available in the December 30th, 2022 edition of Laconia Daily Sun, posted at Laconia City Hall, Laconia Community Center, Laconia Public Library, and the offices of the SAU. We'd like to open this at 7:25 PM, and if you'd like to speak to this matter, now would be the appropriate time. Good evening again, Patrick.
Yep, thank you, Patrick Wood, Shore Drive in Laconia, and first of all, thank you to Kevin for his comments on Shore Drive, appreciate it. I'm concerned about this for a couple of reasons, and I've talked to the planner about it as well. I'm concerned about any agreement to limit parking on street. I'm not sure what the authority might be to do that. I understand there's a difference between street parking and parking lot parking, but I'm concerned about exclusive use. And I think there are ways to deal with this problem. The other problem I had was, according to the plan that was shown at the last meeting, the perpendicular parking on Elm Street would require people to back in and out of those parking spaces on Elm Street. So I think there are some alternatives to this that I would request the city council perhaps to not make any decision on this tonight. The planning board is meeting tomorrow night. Maybe we can do some further discussion with Mr. Everett and find a solution that works for everybody. So that's my concern with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments during the public hearing for 51 Elm Street? Welcome.
Hi, once again, Stephen Bogert, Spruce Street. Speaking as a resident of Laconia, not as a state rep or anything, just resident. Redevelopment and development in Laconia is very important. It's important for our tax base, it's important for bringing in new businesses, and it's important that the people that live within the city have a place to go shop that's new and also have a place to find employment, okay? Now, as far as this goes with the parking, okay, the parking in the street is owned by the citizenry of Laconia and should be able to be used by all the citizens of Laconia, okay, that live here. If we took every parking spot and donated it to every business, we wouldn't have any parking spaces that were public parking spaces for the public. Now, mind you, you do have other avenues of 2-hour limited parkings and stuff, but there are other businesses in the Elm Street area that are not part of the 51 complex, but can park there and be able to go shop at other places within that area. If we allow it to be controlled by one entity, then that can short the other businesses or potential businesses within that area. So please keep in mind that it does belong to all the citizens, even though it is a city of Laconia, but it does belong to all the citizens, not just one developer. And 2-hour parking, like you've done in front of the Chaos and Kindness and places like that, is normal for most of us. And even if you put a city-owned meter, at least the citizenry will get some benefit out of having that parking space. So, thank you.
Thank you. Right up.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Rick Hassler. I own Surf Coaster in Laconia. I've owned a lot of businesses, and I got to tell you, the Opera House to me was scary. My wife didn't even like stopping at the light, and years ago it was tarped, and I thought it was going to be condemned because it really looked that bad. And what's been done to the Opera House by Scott is amazing. We now go to the Opera House, we eat at O's, and my wife didn't even like stopping at that light because she was scared. We went to Belknap Tire to get our tires done, and we walked to Wayfair and ate and drank coffee. That's what's been done by the developer. And as a businessman, I don't think he made a penny. He's going to lose a fortune at the Opera House, so he's doing a lot for the community. So when I see a businessman trying to grow his business and help the community at the same time, I think you really need to look at, he's going to bring jobs and retail, and that's for local people. And these parking spots, it's not costing the city anything. He built them. So when I hear about this, it's like, it's got to be a two-way street in life. And if somebody's like that committed, you guys see developers all the time. How often have you seen a developer like this that came and said, I want to do this for the city? 15 years ago, I was at a meeting with the government came in, Washington came in, some of you people might have been there. They had 3 sections they wanted to work on, the Wares, Lakeport, and downtown. When they said they wanted to work on Lakeport, I'm like, they got a long way to go. Lakeport's came a long way. And, how many investors would really do this and bring back to the community? So I think sometimes you really got to look at who's building the spots? You really have to kind of work with somebody like this that's looking to help the community. So just thought I'd mention that.
Thank you very much.
Lisa Moore on 42 Valley Street in Lakeport. I am a resident of Lakeport. With respect to what that gentleman just said, yes, you have to work with businessmen. I've lived here all my life, and businessmen have not been always the best solution to helping improve this region's economy. It was not a two-way street. There have been many times where, in my personal opinion, we just gave and didn't get a lot back. I'm thinking of things more recently where perhaps I'm seeing a pattern develop. Hathaway House. They didn't want that to get torn down. Oh no, we got a handshake deal on this. It's not going to get torn down. Gone. The fire station in Lakeport. Oh no, the design's going to be this and everything, and now we've got one wall in the interior that's historic. Not what they said it was going to be. I follow Facebook. When Mr. Everett came in with his plan, you had pros and cons, and everybody was like, oh, this is going to be great. Lakeport's a pit. Wow, this is going to be fabulous. And other people going, stop and think. What are some of the implications? And everybody was gun-ho, 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 and I had that same pattern going in my head. We're just going to give. We're going to give to a developer and get stung in the end. And I live in Lakeport. I know what it is to travel around Lakeport, go back and forth every day. I think the Opera House is beautiful, congested around there. If it hadn't been legal encumbrances, we would have lost Sanborn Park to the business. I'm glad Sanborn Park was saved because I think to have large parking lots that are heat sinks and just, it's not good environmentally to have a large parking lot. I'm going to end there because I could babble all night. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to this matter? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing at 7:34 p.m. Moving along to agenda item number 15, I'll just a couple of things with very brief updates. First of all, the city has completed, right now, 7 homeless forums. The city, we've had one in each ward over the past 3 months, led by Partnership for Public Health, and JSI has been the facilitator. The one that we are still waiting to have right now is a forum of lived experience, people who have experienced housing instability or experienced homelessness. But overall, I think what we've received as far as data and input, ideas, opinions, experiences, it's very rich in detail and ideas. The report will be available hopefully within the next month or so, maybe a little longer if we have the lived experience forum towards the end of this month. It may be 6 to 8 weeks out. But we hope to have a document that is a good breakdown of what transpired at these forums, hopefully laying out some of the challenges we face, as well as maybe some opportunities for a pathway forward to deal with this issue, which, as we all know, is layered and certainly complex. Secondly, and finally, just to maybe put the public on notice, is that some initial discussions between the city and the potential purchaser, developer of Laconia State School property have taken place. And without going into too many details, because I don't really think there are a ton of details right now, we're in a period of due diligence on behalf of the developer and their team, which is extensive and in many respects impressive. I would characterize the initial discussions as very positive. So there's still an awful lot of work to be done in this matter, but certainly some initial steps have been taken here, and we'll continue to work on it. And what can be shared with the public, certainly we'll do our endeavor to make sure that the city of Laconia is aware of what's going on. That would conclude my remarks this evening, and I'd go to item number 16, which is council comments. I'll look at you, Councilor Cheney.
I might have one or two, Mr. Mayor.
Let's get them out of the way.
I was hoping I could ask, I've been led to believe that there's either a law or case law with regards to the city acquiring roads that it has maintained for extended periods of time that might not be as laborious as the process that we've been involved in up to this point. So I was hoping staff could find out if, in fact, there is either a statute or a case law that deals with the issue. I'm led to believe there's a statute. I think it would be a lot easier on us to deal with these streets if we knew we didn't have to, query every person on the street, et cetera, et cetera. Not that we shouldn't ask them their opinion, but rather than the formal process that we've been going through. So I would ask that. The second thing I wanted to ask about is last year we voted on the Isaiah proposal for people staying overnight for 120 days. At that time, we were told that the state fire marshal seemed to be RSA 153-4A was his, he was relying on that for authority to facilitate emergency shelters. My review of that statute isn't quite as I'm not quite as confident, but in any case, the fire marshal then told the city that he would work on getting a more in-depth explanation to his ruling and also look into exceptions granted under NFPA 1 and NFPA 101. So I'd ask that the staff see if they could find a follow-up explanation of that stuff. I don't know about others, but I've received a few complaints about problems that exist there, and I'd like to know that what we're doing, what we've done, in fairness to the neighbors, is what's allowed by the law. Or the exceptions to the law.
Clear enough for you, city manager, to,
Yeah, absolutely.
On that?
Yep, oh, we can continue on with that.
Thank you, Mr.
thank you. Councilor Cheney, any other comments? Councilor Haynes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask the manager if he can look into the fact that I noticed in the police report, the blotter, that there had been some activity at the library. There was issues of trespass. And I'm just wondering, seeing that we promised the trustees that we would take care of that situation that arose last year, that I want to make sure that it's being managed.
Yeah, I'll take a look and see. I'll talk to Chief and find out what they've had for issues down there, numbers-wise, and see, what the resolution is.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other council comments? How about committee reports? Councilor Lippman?
Yes, the Finance Committee met this evening on two matters. The first was related to sewer rate changes, and I think we have a concept of how to approach this. Similar to some other issues we've addressed in terms of investments in the city. What we're trying to do is to deal with the fact that there are increased costs. We're all seeing them in our homes in terms of electricity and labor and what have you that go into operating that. There are also capital investments that have to be made to maintain the system. And similar to the school projects where we capitalized some things and did some bond financing to spread the benefit of that over a longer life. So in other words, what we're saying to ratepayers is, yes, we have to address the costs that are sort of current costs, but we shouldn't ask the ratepayers to shoulder, the current ratepayers to shoulder the full burden of capital costs that are gonna accrue over a period of time. And so we're hoping to take up, I think, at next month's meeting, a formal proposal for the council to consider, which would include a combination of some rate increases to reflect the costs of doing business, the part of our sewer system and the Winnipesaukee River Basin project, as well as a capital component that would be used over a series of years to help moderate the ratepayer and to more fairly spread the costs over the life of these capital projects. I don't know if any committee members want to add to that.
If I might, I would only add that I thought the approach that that we discussed earlier today and that you've encouraged up to this point, I think that the staff has done a good job of trying to find a way to arrive where we don't want tax bills to double again for things like sewer projects. My point is, I think you will bring to the council a proposal that will spread this out and make it a little easier for all of the taxpayers, primarily those who can't afford significant increases on top of everything else that's going up. So I support what the chairman of the committee has alluded to, and I look forward to hearing it at the next meeting.
The second item was the subject of one of the public hearings tonight, which is 51 Elm Street. And I think from the public input that we got at the hearing, both for and against, that I think that the committee has some principles that, in terms of trying to work out an agreement, that I think would try to address both those comments that are for and those comments that are against with respect to some sort of accommodation to both encourage the development, which is, I think, one of the favorable comments, and the other is the fact that the spaces are available for people who live in Laconia to patronize those businesses. I think there are a number of issues that, you know, when you look at the previous use of it, that there was a convenience store, there was a tattoo place, there was a hairdresser parlor, that the parking spaces were predominantly used for the benefit of the businesses that were there. And I think that, you know, what we're trying to do is find the right balance between that and the fact that the public should have access to those spaces. And you know, I think that you know, there are other examples in the city where you can look to where there's been accommodation through time restrictions or otherwise the city has acquired property to support downtown parking, where I think we can try to come back with something that reasonably threads the needle of the interests that are being expressed here. So I know we're not planning to suggest that there be action tonight, so if someone's staying around to hear that, I think we're going to come back with something more specific.
Will, do you think it's the intention to discuss further broad parameters of what it might look like tonight or not?
I mean, we could talk through some of the parameters that, if you'd like me to do so, but I think, you know, the main elements are to recognize that there is a balance of interest here, that the spaces would not be exclusive, that they'd be designed to support the businesses that are in the development, that there would be opportunities outside of business hours to utilize the spaces for other purposes. You know, there'd be time limits associated with it, and that you know, there are, I think, details in terms of who would be responsible for what, and that there are spaces that may be on the main street versus spaces off the main street that could be adjudicated in different manners. So I think we need some further interaction to sort of develop those concepts. But I think that the manager and the committee, I think, can try to develop that further to bring forward something more concrete to react to.
Okay. Go right ahead.
Just to go back to the first thing, if you do wish, can I just get a vote to have a public hearing on the sewer rate increases for next meeting?
Sure. We should vote on that?
Yeah, I
or
think
just-
you'd want to vote on it so I can have the public hearing, and then you can discuss it after that.
Okay, so would you
So
like to
I
make
guess
the motion
if we
for
could
that?
maybe just finish and then come back.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. So I guess on Elm Street, I don't know if there are any questions among the counselors on what we just went through. I think we had consensus that that approach seemed to make sense. We need to get some more information. It was good to hear some of the comments at the public hearing so that we can incorporate that in our thinking. So I think that would complete that report. If we could go back and ask for, on the sewer rate change, to be able to bring forward a public proposal to be heard at the public hearing. I think you'd be ready at the next meeting.
So, forgive me for this. I don't understand exactly what the next steps are in regards to 51 Elm Street. So
Do you want to take, okay,
just so we can like walk through it so we know what will be done between now and either the next finance committee meeting or the next council meeting.
So I think we need some more interactions to develop these concepts.
So the interactions would be among whom?
I think in terms of the proposer of this, and I think that, you know, to sort of tease out some of those things more specifically, then I think the process would be then to then have, you know, transparency with respect to what those concepts are, subsequent meetings, and they could be either subcommittee finance or they could be full council, if that's the interest of the council. But you know, I think that the idea is, rather than trying to write a legal agreement to start off, it's let's get the concepts down and then we can write an agreement around that.
And if I might add, Mr. Mayor, I think we were talking, assuming we went forward, one of the other conditions that we're looking at is a short-term trial, as it were, of the use of those spaces, so that we get some idea, assuming we were to do anything like the developer would like, it would be on a short-term basis so the city could see, much like what we talked about the alcohol extension of the hours. A period of time to see, has it created a difficulty, and if so, what our solution might be. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, I think that's part of the discussion in
Yeah,
terms
but-
of
yeah.
what.
One of the concepts that needs to be integrated into any sort of agreement that we might vote on. Right, that's one of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so, okay.
If I might, I think the chairman has tried to, and the manager has tried to thread the needle here and
Yeah.
deserve credit for trying to take care of both sides of this issue. And anybody, other than me pounding the table, ought to step back a step, because they really are working hard at trying to find a way to integrate the developer's wishes with some of the other concerns. I think that's fair, Henry.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more, quite frankly. I'm just making sure that we don't get to the next meeting and we haven't done what the city is supposed to do to build out these concepts and get prepared to take another step, whatever that may look like.
Yep.
Whether it's a vote or whether it's legal looking over a document, I'm not really sure. Just want to make sure we're doing what we need to do in the interim, so we keep moving this forward and it doesn't just sort of.
I think we're moving
Linger.
forward, if I might, but I also don't think we're in a rush here. We're trying to do this in a deliberative fashion. So I don't want to promise you, the chairman obviously.
We're at our best when we rush, though, aren't we?
Yeah, well, yeah. We also make some of our biggest mistakes, and, so, or at
being
least I
face-
do.
I'm being facetious. I understand exactly what you're saying.
I think that the comment in the public hearing about, reducing things to writing, I think we all have seen that not only reducing them to writing, but reducing them to writing in a careful way, not leaving a lot of room for unanticipated adjustments. So
Okay.
I think
So, I appreciate you looking into different avenues and all that. I just want to make sure, one of the things I'd like to see looked into is paid parking. Whether it be kiosks or meters, which I also want to look into downtown as well. I think it's time that we look at that. We had put it off before because downtown was rebuilding, and it's already rebuilt. It's on its way. So I think the same thing there. All you big cities have paid parking. So I think it's something we should look at.
very good. So I think we'll need not an open-ended period of time, but I think we need a few weeks at least to sort of have some back and forth and allow time for it to have some sunlight.
Okay. So there was, and I won't pass it around unless you wanted me to. I just wanted to make sure we had enough copies for all the counselors to take a look at some of the general stuff that was discussed earlier tonight. I'll
Certainly
leave that up
can,
to you.
yeah, we certainly can do that. I think I would look at that as not the,
Sure.
but as an approach to which to work from in identifying some of the issues that have been raised.
It's more of an outline than an
Yeah,
actual.
it's
a
not
draft of a document.
Yeah, it's an outline of some concepts that could change based on further
Yeah.
interactions.
Okay. So you have yours on this side of the table. You all have yours. This is, I'll hand it out this way, one for you, one for Counselor Felch, and I'll keep one myself. So these are just some of the conceptual ideas that were presented tonight at the Finance Committee hearing, which is a little different than what was suggested from legal counsel, which wasn't exactly what we were looking, what Counsel Littman was looking for, and I agree with him. That was a little different. So as concepts go, this is probably something that we can draw from, integrate into something that might look like a rough draft, or eliminate based on discussions going forward and edited. Counselor Susie.
I think what we looked at here earlier really addresses all the comments that I heard tonight from the public. Okay, from the time to the quick turnover, to enforcement, to who's gonna maintain it. I mean, I think all of those are addressed in what was outlined as as talking points, okay? And when I look at that, I don't see anything there that's out of line.
Okay.
Tony, I know it's right in your backyard. I mean, I thought that was pretty well put, other than the paid, which you talked about.
Haven't discussed that yet.
Yeah, I mean.
We certainly can.
Like has been said, the parking spaces are basically owned by the taxpayers. So the taxpayers should be able to use them. And I think where we're at with all this new construction and everything going on downtown and Lakeport, it's time to look into paid parking. And that's gonna limit your times that way. Nobody's gonna wanna park there all day if they're paying a parking meter all day. Especially downtown, when we have a nice parking lot behind the church, it'll force people that are gonna be there all day to use that parking lot. So,
Well, I certainly think the idea of paid parking in the city of Laconia, or at least every place but the Weirs, we'll say Lakeport and downtown, is maybe a topic of discussion going forward. And certainly can continue to be discussed as the months go on right now as to people's desire to have it. I would think that this may move along, Lakeport, 51 Elm Street in particular, may move along at a different pace.
yeah, but I agree.
That's all. If we decide at some point here, after a period of, a short period, which allows for review and reflection and improvement upon the agreement, if it's one is voted in and reached, maybe paid parking is part of that, as it, I think in this one here, there is an initial term suggested, short term of 2 years, and then a review after that and a determination as to whether that should be renewed for a longer period, but certainly can address that, paid parking at any point, I suppose.
And with that said, I don't think it's anything we need to rush into. I think, like Henry said, we need to think about it. We need to talk amongst ourselves. We need to talk amongst the people and do it right.
I do, but I think from the public perspective, I think we've got to also stand in the feet of a private developer as well. Not to move at the private developer's timeline, because their obligations are distinctly different than ours. We have different responsibilities. But I think we should also never forget that, the timeline from the private perspective is different than the public perspective. Where can we find some commonality on a timeline that works for both? And I'm particularly sensitive to that. I don't want to slow walk stuff that we're generally supportive of and see something wither. I'd rather be deliberate in our approach, but also keep moving, if that's the desire of the council.
Can I add, I think it's important for the folks and the other council members. My experience in dealing with this has been that Everett, Mr. Everett and his folks have not been hardcore about this. They haven't, made demands. They haven't threatened anything. Can we work towards a solution? I think that's a refreshing change from some of the things I've seen over the years. And so I feel pretty confident we can come to an agreement that he can live with and that we can live with, because he's not being obstreperous about all of this.
Well put, Counselor.
I will say he has been on Park Street.
Okay, well, look, I don't think we're going to solve that tonight necessarily. Are you finished with reporting on your committee?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so I think we know the work ahead of us right now, and thank you for your comments, counselors. So we are still on committee reports. Any other committee?
Need to set the date for the public hearing.
Set the date for the public hearing. And our next date is what?
23rd.
23rd,
Make
so,
a motion for a public hearing on the sewer rate increase proposal at the January 23rd.
is there a second? Second by Counselor Felch. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. With 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. That'll be on the agenda. Thank you. Any other committee reports? Liaison reports? We're on to item number 19 right now, which is citizens' request to comment on current agenda items. Now would be the appropriate time. If there's something on the agenda you'd like to speak to, step right up, introduce yourself, and speak. All right. Move to agenda item number 20, which is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Included in your packet is this month's financial and operational trends. You'll see with the construction in December, there was not much increase. We only had a couple $100,000 new building this year, which is under what we were at last year at this time, but still trending well. Fire and rescue numbers were up. Couple of storms during December that affected multiple departments for the city, including the fire department. Public assistance, you'll notice that was our $7,335. It's the highest we've had in a long time, in well over a year now. We had a burial that was paid for in that, and with the ending of the emergency rental assistance, we did have some people come forward, so they were making some payments on there. The Executive Council did approve money for an emergency temporary housing through ARPA, so we're going to see, we're probably not going to have that increase that we were expecting in the springtime. Whether you have children or not, it affects you when you lose that money, either in April or December. So we will see some increases coming, but I think it'll be later spring before we see that like we were expecting. Police department numbers, stayed busy, but pretty straightforward. Property tax collection, we're at almost 96% and on par with where we should be percentage-wise for what we're collecting. Same thing with motor vehicle registration. Looking at the overtime numbers, they really, not a whole lot of changes from last year at this time. Police are down a little bit, fire's at where they normally are, or at where they were last year at this time. And the other departments are holding steady as well. Parks and Rec facility reports, same, no changes. We did have a grievance through SEA, had a grievance on, which I had a hearing on, and after having the hearing, we were able to settle the grievance with what was definitely amicable to both sides, so that will not be moving forward past my hearing. Impact fees, no changes. The balances for the trust balances are no changes. Really not much else to report on. The boat taxes they're down a little bit from what we expected, but not too far below our average. Revenue and expenditures are on par with what they normally are at this point, as are the EMS billing. Public Works did have a couple of storms during December, so you see they're starting to expend some of their storm money, but nothing crazy, nothing out of the ordinary. I was asked last month about having code enforcement added to this. There'll be a code enforcement planning section added starting the February meeting. Barring any questions, that's all I have.
Thank you, City Manager. I'm wondering if at the next meeting, we can do a presentation on EMS billing that covers this year, but primarily last year. We'll be 6 months out, right, from, we're 6 months out from last fiscal year when it closed, and whatever we're gonna get paid from the previous fiscal year should have been paid by now. We'd just sort of like to go through, drill down through some of these numbers. Certainly was a significant decision some time ago to, when it transitioned from Lakes Region General Hospital to the city's responsibility here, and I think it's good to stay abreast of this stuff. It's a
Yep, we'll have a
significant
presentation
service,
ready
a
for you
significant
for
amount of money.
this meeting next month.
Thank you. Any questions, the city manager? Seeing none, let's move on to new business under item number 21A. which is the Community Development Block Grant request to schedule two public hearings. Request to schedule two public hearings on January 23rd, 2023 during the regular city council regarding the progress of the renovation of the Laconia Housing and Redevelopment Authority space at 17 Church Street, Laconia. The renovations are complete, and the changing of the proposed tenant in the Laconia Housing Redevelopment renovated space at 17 Church Street, Laconia, from proposed tenant of Partnership for Public Health to Health First. Majority of Health First clients are of low and moderate income. The CDBG funds are available to municipalities through the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority. Up to $500,000 annually is available for economic development projects, up to $500,000 for housing projects, up to $500,000 for public facility projects, up to $500,000 in emergency funds, and up to $25,000 per planning study grant. All projects must directly benefit a majority of low and moderate income persons. So right now, I'll be looking to move to schedule a public hearing on January 23rd, 2023, during the regular city council meeting regarding the progress of the renovation of the Laconia Housing and Redevelopment Authority space at 17 Church Street, Laconia. As we mentioned, the renovations are complete. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Cheney. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. It's 5 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Next, we're looking to move to schedule a public hearing on January 23rd, 2023, during the regular city council meeting regarding the changing of the proposed tenant at the LHRD renovated space at 17 Church Street, Laconia, from the proposed tenant of Partnership for Public Health, New Hampshire, to Health First. The majority of Health First clients are of low and moderate income. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Cheney. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. That's 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Moving on to item number 21D, which requests to declare city-owned property on Lafayette Street as surplus property. Kirk, would you like to walk us through that?
Sure, and we also have Superintendent Crawford from the Water Department here as well, as he brought this forward.
Oh, there he is.
But just, there's a piece of, 1 acre piece of land at the end of Lafayette Street that the city has used for years for, at one point it had a water tower on it. When that got moved, it became for lack of a better term, a dumping area for debris, dirt, that type of stuff that the city has used. The city really no longer has any use for that in that neighborhood, and to use that for that reason or for anything else, we have no real reason to use it. So I've been talking to Superintendent Crawford. He brought it forward to us, and we're looking to make it surplus and get rid of that piece of property from our use. We have no further need for it.
Okay.
And if you have any other questions, he's available.
Hello, Ben. Welcome. If you'd like to, sure. Come right ahead.
I don't know if it's the time of it, but I talked to city manager last week, and so Ben Crawford, superintendent of the water department. I know most of you have seen me before, but so council members Cheney and Susie have sat on the water board at different times, so they've been through this discussion with us. We have a property up there that it's in a residential area. If you know Lafayette Street, it's houses either side of the road. We have an empty lot up there that we've used for, like the city manager said, stockpiling basically. If we have a water main break, we'll bring the debris up there and dump it so we don't have to drive all the way back to Lakeport to Stark Street. We met with a lot of complaints this past couple of years, especially when we did Addison Street. We were running up there a lot and different hours of the night too when we did evening digs. So we were met with a lot of complaints there, and we decided to not use that for stockpiling purposes anymore. So it doesn't make sense for us to keep the land anymore at this point. Reason that I wanted to kind of step up here and just put my opinion out there is, as it is city-owned land, the city of Laconia, the waterworks kind of the sub-owner, if you will. As we look forward, when we were looking at why we would declare a surplus, we had some projects coming up, one being a garage at our Union Avenue location that's failing, and we would want to maybe build a new garage at some point, maybe on our Stark Street location. Kind of using this land as we'll take the money that we earn from any sale of this to go towards another project. Understanding that it is city land, so it would go back to the city. However, I kind of want to give a brief history of why I felt that it should come to the waterworks. Again, this will be voted on at a later point. Just kind of want to give my oversight at this point. So back, again, brief history, 1951, Laconia Water Company, which was a privately owned company, bought the land, built the water tower, in 1955, the city took out a bond to buy the Laconia Water Company and the Weirs system, so basically buy the Laconia water system. And that bond was paid off over the next 30 years via water revenue. So anything that was made from the sales of water was put back into that to pay that bond. It didn't come from the tax base, didn't come from City Hall or city departments. It was a Laconia Waterworks payment, basically. So I just kind of want to put that out there, that as we look forward to if and when we sell the land, that money would come back. Since 1955, when that bond was taken out, the Laconia Waterworks has paid for that and also maintained it for now 60 plus years. You know, so we're, well, 70, almost 70 at this point. But just wanted to put that out there. Again, it is surplus in my opinion, and the board, we've talked about it for a couple months now, that there's no need for us to have it, and it's been more of a headache up there with landowners and homeowners, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you very much, Ben. Any questions of Ben? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
So right now, I'll be looking to, for a motion to move to schedule a public hearing on January 23rd, 2023, during the regular city council meeting regarding the declaration of city-owned property located at Lafayette Street, parcel number 444-126-17 as surplus property. So made by Counselor Susie, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Just one question.
Yes.
So in terms of the basis of surplus, would this, just for the public's benefit, there's two ways in which we can put something out there. This would be intended to be a competitive bid
Correct.
type situation?
Correct.
Okay.
I've asked the city, I've asked the city manager to talk to a couple of the real estate people and see what the market value would be, and then go from there, just to get an idea.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of the motion on the table, please indicate by raising your hands. It's 5 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Item number 21C. Kirk or Wes, would you like to walk us through this a little bit?
I'm gonna let Wes start this, because he was working on this long before I was in the seat, so I'll let him jump in on this.
One of the options that we had available to us was apply for the grant, and the council approved the grant to get a transportation alternative program to basically improve the pedestrian bicycle capability from Franklin Street going up to the elementary school. The way it works for that, it's federal money, goes into the 10-year plan. It has been picked up in the 10-year plan. This is the final documentation that we need to sign. It's the project agreement saying, yes, we will follow all the federal rules in the design and construction of this project. That's basically what it is.
Okay. Would you like to add anything, Kirk?
No, I think that's fine. Director Anderson and I have talked through this. There is a city match to this. We have multiple years to work on that. It's not instantaneous. We got to come up with the money this year. It actually spreads out over almost 7 years, so I have no issues with working through that with them.
So our share on this is $303,000?
Correct.
And, okay. Yeah, but this is, what'd you say, how many years?
We have till 2029.
Okay.
So we have time to work through this.
All right, so right now I'll be looking for a motion to move that the city council approve the project agreement and authorize the city manager to sign the Elm Street project agreement, number 43731, for the Department of Transportation's Transportation Alternative Program. So made by Counselor Susie, seconded by Counselor Felch. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. It's 5 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Moving on to item number 22A, under unfinished business. This is in regards to the alcohol ordinance in the city. Kirk, would you take us through this just for?
Absolutely. So in June, the council approved expanding the amount of time you're allowed to serve alcohol in the Weirs from 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. Per RSA at the state. The governing body, local governing body is allowed to do that. It was done with a caveat to it that you were going to see a 6-month review of the activity up there, mostly police-wise, but any other negative that came from this. That 6 months included New Year's Eve. Excuse me. I have spoken with Chief Canfield twice, once about the summertime and then once about New Year's Eve. From their standpoint, they have no issues with this. He does not believe that any that this additional time frame caused any issues as far as their department goes, and felt fine with this continuing on, and that's where it stands with you now.
I guess before we get to voting on this, Councilor Cheney, have you have any thoughts on this? And
First, I would tell you that I'm stunned that there weren't problems. I too have checked with the chief, and it has been tame. Actually, at one point, he suggested to me it might have been quieter than it had been in previous years, but.
does that account for Representative Bogarts?
Yeah.
Up there at 2 a.m.?
Well, he wasn't listed as one of the problems. But who knows?
Okay.
It was Henry Brunel.
But I would tell you, I support this because my discussions with the chief indicated to me that it went along fine. He tells me that the merchants were cooperative and helpful. I think that's all we can really ask for.
All right, so I guess important to have your input on that, but we can move to motions right now. If there's further discussion on this matter, we have an opportunity to have it. But start things out, the first motion is to waive a reading of this ordinance in its entirety and read by title only, so made by Councilor Cheney, by Councilor Felch. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Right now, I'll be looking for a motion to move a second reading of ordinance 2022-161-25, parentheses 01. So made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Felch. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. It's 5 votes in the affirmative. And finally, looking to move to approve ordinance 2022-161-25, parentheses 01, as presented. So made by Councilor Susie, seconded by Councilor Cheney. Is there any further discussion?
I'd like to make one comment.
Please do.
I just want to recognize for those that would potentially have a future concern that just because we're adopting this ordinance doesn't mean we can't revisit it if there are issues.
Absolutely.
So I think,
I think that's the incentive for folks up there to make sure this goes quietly.
I've seen Anthony's operation and the people that work for him, and they do a great job controlling things up there. They do a great job, so. But it is open to other businesses, so you never know what could happen.
Just to go along with Council Littman's, in the ordinance, there are 2 clauses, one that is liquor enforcement and one is the police chief, as in, if there's an issue, their ruling against it would supersede if there was relative problems. So there are outs if there are future problems.
I think there's a lot to be said when we put this in place for 6 months, 6 months and a day or thereabouts, and certainly Anthony knew what was incumbent upon him, his responsibilities, and you know, I think we're at this stage right now, and it's good to hear that you've received the report from the chief that you have, Councilor Cheney, and appreciate the commitment you've made, Anthony, on this matter as well. So we have a first, we have a second. I'm not mistaken?
We do.
We've had further discussion. If there's not any further discussion, all those in favor, please raise your hands. It's 5 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes.
Thanks, Anthony.
Item number 22B, excuse me, which is discussion to explore parking options requested by Scott Everett for the property in Lakeport at 51 Elm Street. I think, go right ahead.
I'd like to table this until
Tabling is non-debatable. Is there a second? So made by Councilor Cheney. All those in favor? 5 votes in the affirmative. That motion is tabled. Item number 22C, continued discussion of approval of expression of interest regarding the downtown parking garage. First thing we need to do before this, we go any further with this, is to, if there might be a motion to take this off the table. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Susie. All those in favor of the motion? 5 votes in the affirmative. That now takes this item off the table. Go right ahead, Scott. I know you worked hard in preparing this.
Scott?
Oops, I'm so sorry.
I've been called worse.
Really?
He's a fireman, of course he's been called worse.
Cops are called
Yeah,
worse, not
okay,
firefighters.
I can't, I'm not gonna say that tonight. But the mayor said it, so.
Although Scott is a Dolphins.
Well,
fan,
yeah,
so-
no, I don't wanna talk about that
Yeah,
one.
we won't
Sorry.
We're not gonna go down that route.
Through this to be just great.
Back late November, early December, I was asked to look at the potential of opening up an expression of interest for the downtown parking garage, similar to what occurred at the Holy Trinity School, to see if we could get any interest in a potential sale. If you remember back to when the Holy Trinity School, it was, here's a building, tell us what you want to do with it, and would see if anything positive came out of it. It was, and it was sold. We've worked with both the finance director and public works director on this expression of interest, which was similar but different from the Holy Trinity. Holy Trinity was a standalone building. This is not, so it was a little bit more involved. This has gone through our legal counsel because of that. They made some adjustments, and so what you see here is an expression of interest, ability for us to send out to the public and see what we get back. And like, again, it has gone through legal. There was a clause in here again at the end, if you notice. It doesn't bind us to anything that would come forward. So if we don't like any of the potential proposals, or we decide that this isn't the direction that we want to go, we can walk away from it at any time. It was kept simple on purpose, like I said, similar to the last one of these we did. So if you approve this, we will get this out publicly, and when we get them, the closing date, when we get them back, we will have it would end up being non-public to start with, but to see what the return results were.
Thank you, Kirk. One question I have here is that on page 48 of our packet tonight, it says the building will be open for viewing on Friday, January 24th, and Tuesday, January 31st, 2023 at 10 a.m. And that expressions of interest are due March 1st, 2023. I know we want to keep this on a tight time frame. Does that allow for enough time for people, interested parties, to have an initial inspection and get something back to the city? Is it going to harm us if we go to the middle of March and offer 2 more days for opportunities to inspect? I guess those are my thoughts.
We certainly can do that. I'll leave that up to you if you want us to try to. I have no issues going out a little further if we think time frame wise we can. We're gonna have to make a decision at some point. I know we have until July, but we're gonna have to vote on
Sure.
budget if it's gonna come up in the budget as far as bonding or whatever the direction that we're gonna go with this. So we certainly can add a couple of weeks to both of those time frames and give people enough time, and it could come back, late March at the latest for you to see.
Do you really think going out a couple more weeks?
I don't know.
Together,
Well, if I might, I'm surprisingly with the mayor on this. I think a little extra time, it's not surprising. A little extra time would be, in my
taking
mind.
blood pressure.
I had that earlier. Everything was fine.
Maybe a couple other weeks with a couple of other opportunities. And I guess the follow-up question would be, how do we advertise this? Are we hitting a broad enough sector of people out there to make sure that it's not in the Laconia Daily Sun and
No, my intent was to go back with our purchasing agent and do the same as we did with Holy Trinity. If we need to expand a little more, we can. It goes into the NHMA website. It goes into, a lot of these places there's a lot of companies out there that specialize in watching for this type of stuff.
Okay.
So they, it's no different than when we put our bids out for other equipment. They have people looking for these. We'll make sure it gets a broad brush of where we send it.
So I would just suggest that we add 2 dates to, 2 additional dates for inspection, and moving it to, say, March 15th, so long as that's not a Sunday, if that might be agreeable to the council.
I can tell you, I'm tired of this thing getting kicked down the road. And if this type of thing, I like this idea,
That's perfect.
but this should have been thought about years ago.
No, we weren't here years ago.
Well, I agree, I wasn't here either, but, so to delay it even more, I don't know,
I'm not gonna worry about a couple of
for
weeks.
a couple of weeks.
I would only point out to you that engineers and other folks are gonna be wandering around in that building. They may need a little more time, because that building's not as firm as many you might look at, so.
No, I agree
A little
with you.
extra time to look
Right.
at the steel and all that sort of stuff is not inappropriate.
So I would leave it up to your discretion to what two other dates you can add to this.
Yep, we'll add a couple of weeks to it. March 15th is a Wednesday, that works out
15th.
perfectly.
And two other dates for.
Yeah,
inspection.
and 2 other dates.
Okay, so this item is off the table right now. I think we're ready to move to the motion. We're looking for a motion to move to approve the expression of interest with edits of adding 2 additional dates for inspection and moving the deadline to March 15th, 2023.
So moved.
So moved by Counselor Susie, seconded by Counselor Cheney. Do we have enough clarity on that?
Yep.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hands. That's 5 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Thank you. And this is item number 22D, which is sale of unique property located at 28 Indian Path, tax map 180/516/15. Hello. Look up.
Mr. Mayor,
Welcome.
I'm going to let you all
Right
finish
ahead.
your introduction.
You'll have an off the table first.
So we're gonna have a motion to take it off the table, so made by Counselor Cheney, seconded by Counselor Susie. All those in favor? 5 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Kirk, would you lead us into this,
Sure.
please?
So, as everybody's well aware, we've been working through this potential sale of the beach, Indian Path, up off of Hilliard for quite a while now. The last direction that was given before the table was that we were going to make sure that both sides had an agreement in place before they came back forward looking for the sale to be finalized, and that we saw something in writing. I thought both attorneys were going to be here tonight, but I think Attorney Wood has said that he's going to be able to speak to that. We did have a written agreement between the 2 sides that I've seen. It went through our legal counsel. Our legal counsel approved everything. There was a couple of adjustments they just wanted us to see, but those may have even been adjusted, so I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor, but when Attorney Wood speaks, I think there'll be some finalized little housekeeping issues that we will just want to talk through.
I hear we're close.
We've actually reached an agreement, Mr. Mayor. So for the record, Attorney Ethan Wood with Normandin, Cheney, and O'Neill. I'm here representing the Paugus Bay Beach Association. The city manager is correct that Attorney O'Neill and I had extensive discussions over the past week or so with regard to this, and as of today at 7:06 p.m., the city manager was emailed a signed agreement between the Indian Path Beach Preservation Association and the Paugus Bay Beach Association, which is fundamentally the same agreement that Counselor Cheney helped the parties reach in December, and I want to especially recognize his efforts in that because he spent a number of hours with the parties and managed to bring everyone to the table.
If you're wondering what I'm working on, it's his nomination for a Nobel Peace Prize for brokering this deal. So,
Happy to second that.
Yes, yes.
So you know, I just want the money.
I'm sure I have $1 in my pocket. Again, the concerns of both parties were addressed, and there is an agreement that has been sent to the city manager that's signed by the parties, and we anticipate, with regard to the issues that I had pointed out with the deed, they're ministerial rather than substantive, and we would anticipate having those back to Laconia's council by the end of this week, and a deed ready for signature by the city manager, if not this week, the very beginning part of next week.
Brilliant.
I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have with regard to the agreement, but
The only question I asked, maybe procedurally, should we wait for the city manager to come back to us and tell us that everything is as he expected? And then can we vote and say, based upon?
Can I just ask, I'll ask a question if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make sure that agreement that I got, I just scanned it real quick. That is the same as the red line one?
The Redland one and this agreement do have some minor differences, but for the most part, it's either a changing of some wording. So for instance, the Redline agreement had originally said boundary between the two properties. Now it's changed that so that it's clear that we're not doing any sort of subdivision with the land, and that it's just a line delineating the easterly and westerly half of the property. It'll show on the map, it'll be so designated on the survey when the survey gets done. And then there were some miscellaneous provisions in the agreement that were also modified and removed. So for the most part, it is substantially the same as what you saw, and the primary provisions are the same as far as paragraphs 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the change is paragraph 5, which are the miscellaneous provisions, and that's the standard legalese that lawyers insist on adding to contracts. And some of that has been modified, but it is, again, an
So-
agreement that everyone has signed.
I think we're at a point, trust but verify, and I think on behalf of the city, I think we're close, and I appreciate your hard work. And the last thing we want to do is see this agreement go sideways in any way, shape, or form. I think it's probably in our best interest to verify this, and you take some time with it, with council if necessary, and then go from there. What are your thoughts?
I would just like to comment that we all saw the beginning of this. We met over at the library for most of a Saturday, or a large portion of a Saturday, and these people worked it out.
Okay.
I didn't do anything. They
I
did a
wasn't
lot of
there.
grunt work. They did a lot of grunt work getting it to us. But all I'm trying to say is, these were a bunch of citizens who wanted their beach, and they worked their way through it. And I can't tell you how proud of them I am that they came to this agreement. I think it was brilliant. I really.
So is there a way to vote on this right now, do you think, that moves it along, or should we pump the brakes and wait for, and I'll look to the city manager too, since when we put you in an awkward position.
I say, unless the manager refers it back to the council for some reason, I'm sure there's a proper wording of this, but I'd like it submitted to the manager, assuming it's everything we all believe it is. He can go ahead with that. If he has a problem with that, then he should come back to us.
Who's uncomfortable with that, Henry?
Comfortable with that?
Yeah, I would say as long as it's okay with our,
I apologize for
With-
interrupting, I really, really do, but there are some comments from Birch Haven that are still need to be made, and I apologize, I missed my opportunity to speak earlier, because I used the restroom, but I would like to at least ask a question and comment on something prior to any type of vote.
Well, I think, go right ahead.
Okay, Henry Sacco, I represent the Birch Haven Association. I just really have a question for the city manager. We exchanged some email earlier today. I was looking for a copy of the proposed deed. We were provided a copy of the proposed deed late last year, which had language in it that we had requested and we were happy with, and we're still happy with. We have been advised that a new agreement has been just agreed upon, which is awesome, and we're here to fully support that. But I do want to note that the language in the proposed deed from the city, language in the agreement, do not agree. So my question is whether or not the language in the proposed deed that was shared with us late last year is still in effect, or we're using 100% of the language within the agreement. To be very specific, there's some very simple language in the proposed deed from the city, which we agreed with, which had to do with the amount of construction that could be done, agreed to do the bathhouse and storage and things like that, absolutely fine. We have no issue with that. The new agreement is much more broad in that it describes the eastern half of the beach being able to build structures, many, many different things. So those two documents are not in agreement. And again, my question, representing Birch Haven, who abuts this beach, my question is whether or not what was in the proposed deed is going to fall into the next deed, well, the deed that we're going to be using and signing. That's all.
I'll make a point to your first question. The reason I couldn't get your document, as you just heard, I only received it at 7:07, so I
Absolutely
didn't even
fine.
have it.
Yep.
So I didn't have it. The only question that came up through our legal was about the easterly and westerly and whether or not we were going to agree with that. That has been adjusted in their agreement, and I'm looking over towards Attorney Wood on that. That was our only legal counsel question on that, and that's been removed. Correct?
It's correct that there's a delineation that will be shown on the map, but it's not a line that is.
Should be able to be.
Or could be
I'm sorry, go ahead.
mistaken. I'm sorry.
You need to come up to the mic.
Yes, you are correct that there is an easterly and westerly half. The easterly and westerly half are identified by the abutters, so it's clear because if you've seen this parcel, it looks actually like a diamond where the top of the diamond is facing north, so easterly and westerly is obviously a question there, but it is identified in the agreement with regard to who the abutters are. The line that separates those, we just wanted to make certain on the plan that will get drafted by a surveyor is not mistaken as a boundary line between properties, because my client is not interested in subdividing the property, so it'll be a dash line or some other line that simply notes that the property to the east is where development can occur and the property to the west is where development can't occur, because that's been the historical usage as a beach. With regard to the deed, we're not proposing any changes to the conditions that the city had put in the deed. We are simply noting that there's an agreement between the parties with regard to the construction or the potential construction of anything else. So again, the agreement itself is between the Indian Path, the Indian Path Beach Preservation Association and the Paugus Bay Beach Association, and how the actual beach property would get used. Now again, with regard to any development that occurs there, they know that they're going to have to come before the planning board if they're going to be building anything specific, and they're certainly going to need building permits, et cetera. So there will be additional opportunities for any butters to this to object to anything, but there are restrictions not only in the deed but also in the agreement with regard to the building and placement of buildings.
And just to clarify again, so the original proposed deed from the city specifically stated approval to build a bathhouse, which we support, absolutely support, but it was limited to that bathhouse. It was also approval to build a dock, a day dock, which we approve, we have no problem with. But the language in the agreement, and the reason I'm asking the question, is extremely broad in that PBBA may construct, build, place, develop, or implement buildings, structures, I'm not even sure what that word is, fixtures, docks, or other improvements upon the eastern half of the community beach, which is much more than what was agreed upon, well, what was proposed by the city back in 2022.
So, Mr. Sacco, just to clarify one more time, I know we've spoken on a couple of occasions. Is the group you belong to a party to this agreement?
Agreement? No. We are a party definitely to the sale of the beach in that we are abutters. But as far as the agreement between Bobby's Way or Indian Path
So
Association.
you have concerns about the sale between the two groups, but you don't have standing.
No, I have concern about the sale of the property from the city to any group. Doesn't matter. We're not party to the agreement. We don't have beach rights, but we are actually the closest, other than Bobby's Way, we are the closest and we are abutters to the beach, which will see significant impact. So we're not asking for anything new. We're just asking, the original proposed deed by the city had certain language in it. The new agreement between these two parties has additional language
So,
in
all
it.
right, well, it sounds to me that the additional language is the language that's been agreed upon over the most recent history that they've allowed to come to some agreement to put this deal together.
Okay.
So I think that is going to reflect terms of the agreement, most recent terms, and they have agreed to these terms. So going back to language from a year ago,
A few
probably,
months. We're talking
probably
months.
would blow up this deal.
Yeah, well, the original deed, what,
have a copy.
what we put out is, no permanent structures other than a bathhouse and or maintenance shed may be constructed on the property. There was no east-west, north-south, there was no delineation.
Yep.
The new agreement between both sides, and this was the only thing that our legal counsel, questioned, has a little bit more delineation and a little bit more discussion in that. That's the only new additional piece.
So before any construction takes place, upon sale of this property by the city, before any construction takes place on this property, they're gonna have to come to the planning board?
Correct.
Correct.
So the issues that you are addressing right now, Mr. Sacco, would probably be most appropriate to address at that point.
Okay, if you're telling me that,
Well, I mean, that's just my
absolutely
opinion.
fine. When we talked about it last time, the city agreed to work with us, Birch Haven Association, to include some requests that we made. And we're very, very happy. We're very happy with what the proposed deed was. We had no problem with it whatsoever. But things are different now, and we want to make sure that we're still being represented, even though we're not a party to their agreement, we want to be heard.
And I would have to work with our legal counsel on the deed, if, it has to match, obviously, and so we'd have to just work with that, but if you have no issues with that going that direction, then we're fine with it.
I would point out that I've been down and looked at the beach. There's not a lot of, a lot of room down there to build on
Yeah.
zoning wise. So it's not like they're gonna put up 13 buildings and a skyscraper.
They likely won't, but we're trying to protect our long-term interests here. The language in their agreement is extremely broad. The language in the proposed deed from the city was very specific, and we were happy with it.
But as the mayor suggests, it's not just a question of, we sign this and they can do whatever they want.
I totally get that. I
All
totally
right?
get that.
So you're gonna have plenty of opportunity to express your concerns should this get out of hand.
I understand
don't-
that as well.
I would tell you from my perspective, I found these people to be, both sides, reasonable when we sat down at the table. Maybe you should sit down at the table with these folks to do the same.
That's absolutely fine.
I'm not gonna continue to open this up to
I don't mean to, I apologize for not.
I know, but I'm not opening it up to public comment at this point. We're not ready to go deeper into this.
do
So
represent
I'm gonna ask you to
Bobby's
refrain.
Could I-
Please.
Please?
No, I'm gonna move this along. As it is, there was an opportunity to speak to this matter previously. We
And
gave
I-
Mr.
and
Sack,
I missed it.
I'm sorry that you did.
Okay.
We gave Mr. Sacco an opportunity, but I think we're at a point now where we're going to either vote on this or put it back on the table. So, Counselor Cheney, I would look to you.
I made my motion suggesting that, subject to the review of the manager and his
Legal.
comfort, and legal, and his comfort that this meets the requirements that we understood them to be, we approved this sale
So
tonight.
there's a second.
Yep.
Is there any further discussion on the motion in front of on the table right now? Counselor Lippman?
I did.
I can tell just by,
No,
oh, sorry.
no,
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you
Counsel-
inhale?
I was gonna make a comment, but after it was seconded by, Counsel Phelps, yep.
All-
So I think in terms of just the process to make sure the city manager is okay here, in terms of, so you're gonna look at the agreement that, the agreement that came
Yep.
in, okay, that the deed will be something that will be recorded and developed by our council, is that
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay.
There will be an adjustment in that that one piece of the delineation that's not there, so just so everybody's aware.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you are concerned about any point that it doesn't reflect what Councilor Cheney just kind of overviewed, that you'd come back to the council and
Yep.
the deal would not be closed till you got our consult.
Absolutely.
Satisfied? Yep. Okay, the motion's on the table. All those in favor of the motion on the table, please indicate by raising your hands. That's 5 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. I'm going to adjourn the city council meeting.
Could
at
I
8
just ask one last question? Has anybody heard about, recently about Counselor Hamel? I'm sorry? No. No? Okay. Thank you.
Going to adjourn the city council meeting at 8:15.
Thank you, sir. Of course I am.
Excuse me.